What's up, everybody? On today's show, the aftermath of John Calipari leaving Kentucky for Arkansas. We're going to discuss the latest right here on Locked On SEC.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we're going to talk all about the latest news with John Calipari leaving Kentucky for Arkansas and the aftermath of what that leaves at Kentucky, what it means for Arkansas, and much, much more. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And by the way, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Locked On College over at Game Time. All right, let's dive right into it as we've been talking about John Calipari leaving for Arkansas. And as of this recording, still no official announcement made, although a lot of the big dogs in the sport have reported that it is happening. Pete Thamel, of course, announcing it Sunday night. We've had everything from John Calipari walking his dog and being intercepted by a local TV station and much more. But joining us now to talk all about this is Tristan Pharis. He covers Kentucky for Sea Blue and KYinsider.com. Tristan, appreciate you jumping in, man. I know it's been a busy 48 hours for you, so appreciate you jumping in, man.
No problem, Chris. I appreciate you having me on.
So let's dive right into it, man. The news breaks Sunday evening. It kind of started. It was almost like an internet rumor at first. And then it starts to get, substantiated by some pretty big names, including Pete Thamel, who comes out and, says this is happening. But what was your initial reaction Sunday evening when all this news kind of started to break?
Well, actually, I got first wind of it on Saturday, and it's like you kind of said, I just thought it was just a run-of-the-mill rumor. Hal's been linked to half a dozen jobs over the last 15 years. So usually when those happen, you just kind of, the wind takes them away. But when Sunday night started rolling around, and I had some people text me like, "What's going on here?" And then the next thing you know, you see some of Arkansas, some reputable people starting putting that out. It was like, oh, this may be real. I hadn't heard anything on the Kentucky side, and everybody that I talked to was kind of shocked how quickly it unfolded and it actually happened. But I do think it's a move that's best for Calipari individually and for Kentucky as a whole. So surprising how it happened and how quickly it has. But I do think it's beneficial for both parties.
It's crazy because, there was this whole thing about, is Kentucky going to buy him out? Are they going to move on? And, they did the whole thing where Mitch Barnhart comes out and goes, we've evaluated our coaching staff and John Calipari will be our head coach next year. They go as far as to do the sit-down interview with the local TV station where both of them sit awkwardly next to each other, look completely uncomfortable, and but they both say all the right things. And even Calipari was on his radio show right after the loss to Oakland and says, hey, I'm excited to get to work for next season, talking about everything he's going to do and talking to players and getting these guys to come back and all this. So what do you make of all of that? Because it does seem like, at least the talks with the Tyson chicken family and all that, like Cal's been talking with them for several weeks about maybe making this happen. So what do you make about, Cal standing by Kentucky when all this was kind of still going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, that's kind of what a lot of people have a problem with. Obviously, there's a good portion of the fan base that I won't say excited or about this move, but are optimistic about what Kentucky getting back to the standard it's been for the last 75, 80, 100 years. So there is some optimism there, but just it's weird when you go on a coach's show just 72 hours after you have one of the biggest upset losses in program history, and then kind of say you're committed to it. And then he kind of burns Mitch at the stake because Mitch Barnhart, who's not the most popular man in Lexington, put his neck on the line and put his job on the line backing Cal to come back for another year. So that's a lot of people have found issue with that. Like I said, not anger or just more frustration and kind of. I think it just kind of shows the lack of self-awareness Cal's really had the last few years, and that's just one example.
I want to talk a little bit about the roster stuff, but let's talk about the fans real quick. What are Kentucky fans feeling right now? Because it feels like they were pretty 50-50 on, when there was discussion about, are they going to buy him out and move on and go another direction? Some fans kind of, I guess, seem resigned to, okay, he's coming back. We'll run this thing back one more year. We'll see if it works. But where are the Kentucky fans on this? Because a lot of them kind of seem like, hey, good riddance. We're happy to move on.
Yeah, I know. And a lot of that comes from the last 4 years. Kentucky has one SEC tournament win and one NCAA tournament. That's not the standard at Kentucky. So a lot of people, if you just look at it, the teams have changed, the rosters change every year. He's made assistant and staff changes. The only thing that's been constant is Calipari, unfortunately. He hasn't adapted to the new age of college basketball like he had done his entire career, adapting to and everything. So the fan base is, I think the majority understands and accepts this as a reality, and it's needed to move forward for Kentucky. Because it didn't look like, he was bringing in 6 freshmen, so it didn't look like he was going to get much older or allow the transfer portal. And that's before you even consider anybody returning. So I do think some Kentucky fans are uncertain, and that's okay, just because we've been so used to the Cal being here the last 15 years. So that feeling of uncertainty is warranted. So there's some mixed feelings, but I think overall the general consensus is more optimism on the other side of it.
Let's talk a little bit about the roster, because we've seen here the last 24 hours the roster fall out. We saw Kentucky freshman Aaron Bradshaw officially entered the transfer portal, and then top 25 recruit Karter Knox decommitted from the Wildcats and reopened his recruitment. Where are we with this roster? Obviously, I think it feels like Kentucky's going to try to make a move here very soon, and we'll talk about coaching candidates in a bit. But where are we with the roster turnover? And is this just kind of expected? Guys who are on the roster that want to come back for another year, they don't know who the coach is, so they're going to enter the transfer portal. And it seems likely you're going to lose some of these commits as well, because Calipari's going to Arkansas.
Yeah, 100%. And whenever this happened, whether it happened 2 years ago, or just for the sake of argument, he were to leave 3 years from now, if he kept the job, this was always going to happen with Calipari, and that's just kind of it happened when he got here. He pretty much brought in an entire new starting lineup, and that's why he was so successful from the start. So now it is a little bit different. You got, like you said, you got the transfer portal, you got NIL that you can work with, you can fill a team, but there's probably 2 players that aren't really affected by this in terms of their decisions to either stay or one and being re-shepherded and returning. I do think it's more likely than not he stays in the draft. I just think top 10 pick, top 15 pick, you don't pass that up. And then as for Travis Perry, he's an in-state Kentucky top 100 recruit, 4-star, not the elite that Cal usually gets, but it was his dream to play for this program. So that's probably the only 2 players that aren't really affected by what's happened.
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the mock drafts right now, and they have, Reed Shepherd is projected to go number 5 overall, and Rob Dillingham, the other freshman, projected to go 9th overall. So both those guys still projected top 10 in the draft. So seems very likely they are both heading off to the NBA. We're talking with Tristan Pharis. Quick timeout. We'll be back with a little bit more Tristan here in just a second, right here on Locked On SEC. Well, first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by FanDuel. It is playoff time in the NBA and NHL. And look, baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? Go visit them right now. It is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go make your first bet an automatic win. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you've never signed up with them before, you want to get in on the action, get signed up, take advantage of all the great possibilities they have there for you. And again, get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. It is FanDuel.com/locked-on, and it is FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Go check them out today. All right, we continue on here on Locked On SEC and talking with Tristan Pharis. And man, it's just so fascinating looking at this Kentucky thing. And obviously, waiting for the official announcement to come out of Arkansas, but the reports have kind of leaked out that, okay, he's going to sign a 5-year deal worth, slightly less than the $8.5 million a year he was making at Kentucky. Are you surprised with the dollar figures that, Cal leaves Kentucky, but man, he's going to be making pretty similar money? It's pretty interesting.
I think Calipari's made enough money in his career that he's okay with the small price, the small cut and pay. I do think that the change of scenery is going to be the biggest thing for him. Is he just doesn't. And he can kind of Arkansas is a top 50 jobs in college basketball, so it's not like it's a bad job or anything. They've had some real success there, and I think he will do really well there, just being motivated again. But the money doesn't really surprise me, but it seems like he's got some real money backing him from the Tyson Foods. So that's certainly like you had talked about earlier. So he's got a good contract. He's got good NIL to work with, so he's got a good foundation in terms of financials with the move.
Let's talk a little bit about where Kentucky goes from here, because it feels like, they're going to do their due diligence, but, I would think they're not going to take their time and drag their feet here, but there's some big names out there. And, one of the names that was thrown out there, ESPN's Pete Thamel has thrown out there, the Chicago Bulls head coach, Billy Donovan, is near the top of the names on the Wildcats board. Of course, we've heard, everything from Jay Wright's name to Bruce Pearl to, a lot of big names out there. And of course, the head coach over at Dan Hurley over at UConn. So what's real, what's not? Where do you think they're really looking for next head coach over at Kentucky?
So I think there were 4 bits that kind of stuck out. Just a little bit ago, Nate Oates he announced that he'd be staying. Then I know the Alabama NIL, they kind of stepped there, and he used some bargaining chips to help him there. So I think that leaves 3. Like I said, at least early candidates that you're looking at. You had mentioned Billy Donovan, who's turned down Kentucky twice, but he had Kentucky ties, coached under Rick Pitino. Here at Kentucky was an assistant for 5-6 years. So that he got rising pension. He's in the NBA now, so it is a little bit different, and he hasn't coached college basketball in almost a decade, so he hasn't been part of the NIL or portal era, so that is something to be worried of. The other one that I think is a little bit of a long shot is Danny Hurley. It kind of depends on what happens. The way I've kind of looked at it is if UConn wins another title, obviously he'd be mid-dynasty, and maybe he's crazy enough to take the challenge that's Kentucky. So that's kind of what I'm looking at Danny Hurley. But I think in terms of general fit and his personality, and due to his relationship with Mitch Barnhart, the Kentucky athletic director, I think Scott Drew is probably the most likely hire. So I think those are the 3. But once they get there, that 4 gets real murky, and I'm not sure where Kentucky kind of steers to.
Yeah, the interesting one, Scott Drew is just really interesting in my mind because it's a guy who has coached at Baylor and done a really good job. He's won a championship there, but Baylor being a private institution, I don't know if we'll ever really find out exactly what the dollars and cents are of what he makes and, incentives and all that kind of stuff behind the scenes. But it does feel like, that guy, look, you've accomplished great heights at Baylor, but, as somebody described it to me the other day, they said, when Kentucky calls, it doesn't matter who you are. You take that phone call because, it's the blue blood of blue bloods. And if you're a coach that likes competition and all that kind of stuff, like you're going to listen to the phone call. And so Scott Drew just seems very interesting because it feels like, man, he's already been one of the greatest coaches of this era, but he could really solidify himself as one of the best of the current era to go to a blue blood like Kentucky and win there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you just look at what he took over at Baylor, I mean, that was a program that was pretty much the death penalty. They had obviously a teammate murder, another teammate, and it was a huge scandal. And he turned that program in about 4 years and got them into the tournament. And then almost 16, 17 years later, won them a national title. So that's probably the most impressive turnaround of a program that, especially in recent memory in terms of college basketball. So if he can do that with the resources of Baylor, which obviously they stepped up here lately, and that's why they've been so consistently good of late. But if he can do that with those resources of Baylor, that's not been a traditional basketball school. The thinking is he can be even better at Kentucky. I do think he's the high floor option. He's not the exciting hire that Calipari was back in 2009. Just he doesn't have that same arrogant personality, or he doesn't use that same confidence. But he's definitely a good coach, and his track record kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, it's fascinating and funny, interesting how you mention Calipari and the I don't know if I'd say full of himself, but he's a little full of himself, and thinks very highly of himself, and feels like if he had humbled himself a little bit more, then maybe things could have gotten back on track at Kentucky. Last thing for you, Tristan, we certainly appreciate your time. Do you have a pick? We mentioned some of the names of the guys who were maybe the leaders in the clubhouse, but if you could pick the next Kentucky head coach, who would you pick?
Are we being semi-realistic or wish list?
Either way.
I'll go semi-realistic just because the wish list, Brad Stevens and Jay Wright aren't going through that door. So semi-realistic, I would really like Danny Hurley. I just think the only thing that worries me about him is he's obviously had some instances this season passing back some fans. You got to have some tougher skin if you're going to coach at Kentucky in terms of that aspect. But the dude is I think he's going to win tonight. He'll have back-to-back national titles, and he's done that at UConn, and kind of brought a program that they've had. If they win tonight, they'll have 6 titles in 25 years, and he'll have 2 of them in 2 straight years. And he kind of brought that program from the depths that had fallen under Kevin Hurley a little bit under there. So that's my pick, and I think he brings that fire. He kind of has that little confidence and arrogance, and that John Calipari came in with. So I think that's a positive, and I do think Kentucky fans, for the most part, would like that as long as they're winning.
One more quick one for you, Tristan. Do you think Cal wins at Arkansas? I mean, we talk about it. They're going to give him all the resources in the world. Sounds like they're going to give him millions of dollars for NIL and all that. Obviously, he's always been a great recruiter. I mean, what do you think the ceiling is for him at Arkansas? Can he win a title there?
Cal can win big at Arkansas, but I think what it comes down to is how much is he willing to change. And I think his pride kind of got in his way here at Kentucky. He really wants to do things his way and win his way. He wants to. That's kind of. I mean, he is the face of one and done basketball. He won with it with the 2012 title, and he's trying to be reluctant in changing that. But I mean, if you just look at the tournament the last few years, look how few freshmen had been in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. There's not hardly any in the college basketball in the championship tonight. So college basketball is just split. If Cal can change his approach, and maybe instead of going after 5 freshmen, go after 2, 3, maybe 4 on a crazy year, but can bring in 2 or 3 top transfers and fill it in with supporting pieces that are older veterans. He's the best recruiter. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman, senior, 25 years old. He can get any player he wants to. It's just how is he going to adapt and what changes he's going to make. And then I think the second part of it is he's put better people around him. Not to say that the staff around him is bad now, but they don't fit his weaknesses. And at the end of the day, you can be a Hall of Fame coach, but your staff is a really big piece of that too.
Yeah, no doubt. And, look, the biggest gripe, I guess, in recent years at Kentucky has been maybe not the best X's and O's coach, drawing up a play in the final seconds, those kind of things, crunch time. It's probably where Cal has lacked the most, but no doubt when it comes to the recruiting trail and all that, he has absolutely killed it. And Tristan Pharis killing it over at kyinsider.com. I'm up there at the website, and you guys have been all over this, man. I think 8 stories posted in the last 24 hours. Crazy how much.
It's been a lot.
You guys have been killing it, though, man. And appreciate you taking some time, man. And we'll encourage all our listeners to go check out your work. And we'll talk again soon. All right.
I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you, guys.
All right, that's Tristan Pharis of kyinsider.com. And again, been all over this Kentucky news, and it just continues to be one of the biggest stories in the SEC when it comes to a big name, the biggest name coach in the SEC in terms of college basketball in the last decade, moving to another SEC brand, moving over to Arkansas. So coming up next, we'll talk a little bit more on some of the fallout here between Calipari going to Arkansas with, where does Kentucky go and that sort of thing. More Locked On SEC here in just a second. Well, first, I want to remind you guys this episode is presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app. Look, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time is going to take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They got last-minute deals where you save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, and other deals. Flash deals, you save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Zone deals, you save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. And then all-in pricing, you toggle that feature to show the total up front. No surprise fees at checkout. You know exactly what you're paying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Get $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. It's last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, roll along here on Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. If you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day on your TV and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you each and every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today, bringing you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, let's dive back into some of the news when it comes to Kentucky and Arkansas and this John Calipari story. Of course, John Calipari leaving Kentucky after 15 seasons with the Wildcats. News broke Sunday evening. The four-time SEC Coach of the Year is expected to be formally introduced as the new head coach at Arkansas. Although here we are going through all day Monday, and the news was not officially out from the Arkansas side. But again, all sides say that it's pointing towards that direction. And Calipari expected to have an excess of $5 million per year earmarked for NIL funds at Arkansas. Multiple reports have suggested that a serious commitment to NIL was the sticking point for Calipari. Matt Norlander, reporting the incoming head coach, wanted to be able to bring his Kentucky-bound freshman class with him to Arkansas. And we're going to see if that happens. Time is going to tell, but very interesting in what his roster is going to look like. Of course, reports came out from ESPN. He's finalizing a 5-year deal that will have an overall base salary of slightly less than the $8.5 million he is making at Kentucky, but the deal is expected to be incentive laden with the ability to pass that number. And of course, the key relationship of that deal, going back to Calipari's longstanding ties to John Tyson, the billionaire who was a longtime Arkansas benefactor. But we talked about it. The news coming out yesterday, the roster fallout, Kentucky freshman Aaron Bradshaw entering the transfer portal, and top 25 recruit Karter Knox decommitting from the Wildcats. Bradshaw had considered transferring out of the program before news of Calipari's expected departure after an up-and-down season in Lexington. Knox will still consider Kentucky, according to reports, but his father tells ESPN Arkansas will also still be under consideration. Look, people want to play for Calipari. He is getting guys to the league on the regular, even if you're not having great postseason success. That is going down. But Knox is a McDonald's All-American, Bradshaw was a McDonald's All-American in 2023. He was ranked number 6 in the ESPN 100 coming out of high school, but a foot injury last spring forced him to miss the entire offseason and delayed his Kentucky debut until early December. So we'll see where he ends up. If you missed it, John Calipari was filmed by WKYT on Monday afternoon. He was walking his dog and pushing a stroller along Richmond Road. And the news reporter approached him asking if he had a comment on the news. And he said, quote, "No, I don't. I'm walking my dog right now." Declined to give a comment to Kentucky fans. But man, like for a guy who's about to leave town and go to a conference rival, you're just going to walk your dog in Lexington and walk about among the public and act like nothing's going on. So just kind of interesting on that side of things. So one other tidbit when it comes to recruits, Kentucky Sports Radio reporting 5-star signee Jaden Quaintance would like to stay at Kentucky and is not currently planning to follow Calipari to Arkansas. Quaintance and his family would like to speak with Mitch Barnhart regarding his vision for the coaching search and the incoming freshman's path under the new administration. The first priority is Kentucky before worrying about other schools. Do not currently envision the top 5 prospect to end up in Fayetteville. That's from Jack Pilgrim. So interesting news there on the Kentucky front. How about on the Arkansas front? Arkansas's Trevon Brazile told ESPN his college career is over. He is hiring an agent, declaring for the NBA draft. He said, "I'm 100% into the NBA draft. Arkansas made a big hire with John Calipari. I'm happy for the program, but the main thing for me is keeping a one-track mind. I'm going out for my dreams in the NBA." So Trevon Brazile is on his way out. We also saw Tremont Mark, the transfer from the University of Houston, who was the leading scorer for Arkansas this year. He entered the transfer portal, but that was before this news of John Calipari coming. So we'll see if he decides to stick with that. Just one other note here when it comes to SEC hoops news. Florida guard Walter Clayton Jr. is going to enter the NBA draft. He was the team's leading scorer, scored 17.5 points a game this season. He is entering the NBA draft with the potential to rejoin the Gators for his senior season. He's 6'3" junior guard. So keep an eye on that. But all eyes are on Kentucky and who they are going to hire. And some big names out there. The latest betting odds. This is from Bet Online as of Monday afternoon. They had Scott Drew tabbed as the odds-on favorite. Nate Oates behind him. Of course, we've kind of since heard the news that Nate Oates very likely to stay put there at Alabama. Richard Pitino's name got in there again. I think that's just kind of the ties to the Pitino family and his dad coaching, his name getting thrown in there. Billy Donovan, of course, his name's still in there. Mark Pope, who we mentioned yesterday, the BYU head coach who has ties to Kentucky. Kelvin Sampson at the University of Houston, of course, he's up there in age. And then other names on this list: Jamie Dixon, Sean Miller, Chris Beard, Rick Pitino, Shaka Smart, Penny Hardaway, Bruce Pearl. All those names kind of in the mix there, but we'll see what happens. Of course, like I said, I would expect Kentucky to move very quickly. They want to make a new hire and get this train rolling very quickly and move on and salvage whatever part of the recruiting class they can and turn the page from the John Calipari era very quickly and start taking care of your donors. I mean, you start getting some money into the program and all that sort of thing. So thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Calling back tomorrow on the show and check us out. We'll be talking all things SEC. We'll talk some more football nuggets as well. Hey, for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with our local experts. Search Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordon. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.